Hello, my fellow Americans. It's October, the last month of year one of my campaign, and the month that I have to do 3 videos in to make up for 2 missed months. Considering it's the last week of October, I felt 3 policy videos would be a bit overwhelming for anybody who decided to watch the videos. And as such, we're going to do something a little different on at least 2 of those videos. Today, for example, I'm going to do a Q&A session. There are a lot of things that have been posed to me both online in interactions as well as in real life. Questions, comments, concerns, and some of them I feel need addressed on a broader spectrum so that if they come up and anybody's wondering, they're right there out in the open, they can be addressed from this video. But for a record, if you have any questions, comments, concerns about my potential presidency, please bring them up. Ask. I am not afraid to answer questions. Without further ado, let's begin. The most common question that gets posed to me, and perhaps concern if you will, is about my experience. People ask, Adam, what political experience do you have? Now the short answer for that is none. I have no political experience whatsoever. And an easy rebuttal to that would be, if you have no experience as a politician, how do you intend to hold the highest political job in the nation? What qualifies me to be president? Now, historically, there have been a number of presidents that had no political past. It's not new that we have many examples, but there are examples in the past. And for the most part, things have gone rather well for people who weren't career politicians. But this isn't about any of them. This isn't about the past. This isn't about any other president. This is about what I, Adam Zane Patsy, can do as president. What I can do with no experience. Now, it's easy to think if somebody doesn't have experience in a field, they're going to do terrible at it. But it's my lack of political experience that benefits me the most, in fact. I'm not a career politician. I'm not locked in like that. I'm not corrupt. I haven't been bought out. And we'll come back and address all this in a question down the road, too. But I have not found my way mashed into the gears of this country's political climate. I am not one of them. I'm not a member of either political party, either main political party. I'm not a member of any political party. I have no loyalties to any party. I'm only loyal to the American people. But none of that addresses how any of this qualifies me to be president. Well, the thing about it is, with no experience as a politician, that means I've gotten my experience from other regards of living in this country. I've lived and worked in this country, like actually worked. The kind of thing you get calluses on your hands from work. The kind of thing you go home and your back hurts, and your feet hurt, and your knees hurt. The kind where you don't get enough sleep because you work too much or drive too far to get to your job. I've actually worked in this country. I've seen what it's like to be an average American. I've lived it. I know what it's like. And I want to see that made better for everybody. I don't want to see my children have to grow up and work some of the jobs I've experienced. I don't want anybody's children to have to grow up and do that. Now, the jobs are always going to be there. Jobs just don't suddenly magically disappear and better, more fun jobs be there. But in the regards of not working them, I mean the pay. I mean the treatment of the worker. I mean, if they're going to do a job that kind of sucks to do as far as jobs go, I want to see them compensated for that. Now, again, I'm getting a little sidetracked. But these things, experiencing the real America, is what qualifies me to be president. I can bring something to the presidency that the presidency hasn't seen in years. a real working class perspective. A real perspective of what is wrong with this country. Not some snooty rich guy who sees the world in shades of green because of their money. I can show this country from the perspective of leader how to be better for the average American. And now I might have no political experience, and that might be one of the greatest jabbing points a lot of people come at me with to attack me. But as I said, that is also my strongest aspect of why to be president. You want things to change in this country? You want to see things be different? You can't continue to follow the same road. You cannot continue to vote for the same types of people and expect different results. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. And for far too many years in this country, have we done the same thing, thinking we're going to get different results? The answer is not within either of the two parties. And that has been made blatantly clear. There are other options and other answers. And I hope to prove to this country that I am among those answers. That I am willing to bring change to this country. Positive, real change. Not just promises. Now, some of that leads to other questions. Some of what I just said leads to other questions. Way back in it, I mentioned free of corruption, etc., etc., etc. Another concern and question that gets posed is, I guess it's a comment in this regard, but all politicians eventually get corrupt. So the question version of that would be, what makes me any different? And I'll tell you, what makes me different is there's nothing I can be bought off with. I work a job right now that pays decently well, especially for my area. It pays really well for my area. The benefits are good for my area. So, going based on my area, I'm pretty well set off with what I make and what benefits I have. Now, the rest of my situation, I live in my parents' basement, which there's very much room for criticism there. But if you look statistically, a lot of people in my generation, they're living at home because they cannot afford to live on their own. The system is broken in that regard. The housing market is trash. And a lot of people just can't afford it. And the ones who try, sometimes they'll sink themselves. And I don't want to be among that. I would rather live in my parents' basement and save money by splitting costs with them and be embarrassed to a certain degree to tell people I live in my parents' basement. But I would rather do that so that maybe someday I can retire. Maybe someday I can leave something for my children when I pass. I would rather experience living in their basement now than suffering for choices later, for trying to buy a house and suffering for it and killing myself to pay it off the rest of my life. Now someday I will own a home. I intend to. But for now I'm going to save until that becomes more realistic. But I have gotten very much distracted on this, so let's circle back around. I make decent money, have good benefits. I live in my parents' basement, and I would be satisfied to eat ramen noodles every day so long as my children are fed real meals. And on my pay, I can afford to feed more than just my children. I can afford to feed myself real food as well. But the fact of the matter is, if it wasn't that good and I had to eat ramen noodle every day, I would. Would I like it? No. But I would, as long as my children are taken care of. And all of this leads to the point. If I make what I make now, live in my parents' basement, am satisfied with the life I have right now that isn't very good like, as far as most people are concerned, a lot of people would look at it and go, you don't do anything. It's what I'm happy with. But if I'm satisfied with where I'm at now, when I'm president and the base pay on president is like over 10 times what I make a year. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's way more money than I'm making now. What is somebody going to offer me when I have more money than I know what to do with that makes sense? What are they going to offer me? What are you going to try and bribe me with? More money? I don't need more money. I don't even need the amount of money I'll be paid as president. As a matter of fact, there is a very big piece of me that is considering donating most of the money I make as president. Because I don't need it. It doesn't make sense to pay me an inexorbitant amount of money like that. So, really, what are they going to bribe me with? What can they offer me that now, as an average working class human being, I don't already have? More money? I don't need more money. More time? I mean, how do you offer somebody more time? You only have so many seconds in a day, and there's no way somebody's magically giving you more time. What do they offer? They have nothing to offer. And they really have nothing to offer, because even if I didn't have a cent to my name, I know my children would be taken care of. And even if I didn't have a cent to my name, I would have my morals. And now that is something that doesn't mean a lot to most people in this world, it seems, nowadays. But I am one of the people who very much value my own moral code. To a point where I put it above pretty well anything. I refuse to step back on things that mean something to me. If I feel that an issue needs addressed, I will address it. If I feel a problem needs solved, I will put everything into trying to solve that problem. And there is nothing and no one that can offer me or scare me or bribe me to change that. I will do everything in my power to hold up to every promise I make. I will do everything I can as president to see things changed, to see positive change brought to this country, to see things that are messed up fixed. I will do everything I can. And as I said, nothing, no one can offer me anything that will change that. So, can anybody be corrupted? Can anybody be bought off? No. You may not personally believe it, and if you don't, that's sad for you. But there are people in this world, people like me, who cannot be bought. Who would put their beliefs before anything. Now, beliefs, that leads to another question. Religious beliefs. And we're going to keep this one really short. Just side note of things. What are my religious beliefs? I don't follow a set religion, and that's not important. None of my beliefs in a religious regard are important to being president. It means nothing to being president. And do you know why it means nothing? Because it will not interfere with me doing my job. My personal religious beliefs, my personal faith, whatever it may be that does not need discussed, if you so choose to ask it, I will discuss it. But what does not need addressed in a political sense, my personal beliefs mean nothing. They will not affect how I do things. They will not affect how I act about things. I will not make judgments based on them. I will not act on them. Because they are absolutely should not be involved. This country is not supposed to be about any religion. Religion is supposed to stay out of frame. It has nothing to do with the governing of this country. Separation of church and state. And as such, My beliefs, whatever they may be, will not be of any bearing to my presidency. So, if you're afraid of somebody who's non-Christian, then maybe I'm not the candidate for you. If you're afraid because it's not just the non-Christian, but the fact that there's no religion whatsoever assigned to me, then maybe I'm not the candidate for you. If you think no religion means I'm atheist, then you are very, very wrong. But if that scares you, maybe I'm not the candidate for you. If anything faith, religion-based about me scares you, the fact that I say, I don't follow a religion, I won't let it interfere with my choices, if somehow that scares you, maybe I'm not your candidate. But maybe you have to reconsider. Shouldn't you be happy with a politician who won't let their personal beliefs religiously interfere with the decisions they make? Shouldn't you be happy that I have personal beliefs, such as my video on abortion I did? Do I personally agree with it? No. But I won't let that interfere. I feel that that's a right that women should have. It's not my place to say. Anyways, little sidetrack there. But shouldn't you be happy that my personal feelings will not interfere with choices like that? And if you're more afraid of somebody that has a moral compass strong enough to say, just because I believe it doesn't mean it's necessarily the way things should be. If somehow that scares you, maybe you're too used to the way things are. Anyways, though, we're getting a little sidetracked, so perhaps we move on to another subject. Another one of the big criticisms is going back to the living in my parents' basement. I've been regarded by a lot of the guys at work, actually, as like, oh, you live in your basement. Oh, your parents' basement. Oh, what a loser. How do you call that real world experience? Oh yeah, you're working, but you comfortably live in your parents' basement. Brr. I have lived outside my parents' home on more than one occasion. I have lived entire states away. I live in Pennsylvania right now, for anybody who's unaware of that. Born, bred, raised here. It's where I've spent most of my life. But there was a 1.5 year, 2 year period I lived in South Carolina. Now I know you're saying, oh, 1.5 years, 2 years, oh, what experience. That's just one time I lived outside of my parents' house. I live here now for the convenience of it saves me money. For the convenience of if I'm busy with something, whether it be work or otherwise, I have somebody to watch my daughters if they're down here. There's a lot of convenience that comes with living here. And now, that's not what we're here to address. We're here to address, oh, how do you consider that any experience? I have experience not living here. I don't see how living at home disqualifies me from being president. And again, if that's why you choose not to vote for me, okay, I would maybe like to understand how that thinking process goes if that's the deal breaker. But, you know, I'm not afraid to admit who I am in these regards. I'm not afraid to admit who I am in any regards. I'm a working class American who happens to live in his parents' basement and has children and still lives in his parents' basement. Typically, when I was a teenager, I regarded me now as a loser. But as an adult, I understand the circumstance. Everything's not as black and white as it's made out to be. Things are shades of gray. But again, I apologize. I am very much getting sidetracked. And that's because a lot of what we're talking about today, it means something to me. This whole everything means something to me. This being president means a lot to me. Not because, oh, well, it'll be so cushy to make that much more money than I make now, and I won't have to, I won't have to do physical labor to make my money. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with wanting to see better for this country. Wanting to leave behind a legacy. Not so that people remember me, but so that people have something 100 years from now to remember. So that 100 years from now there is something left. So that we don't destroy ourselves. Now, some of the other big questions, they happen to be political based. So there's a part of me that doesn't want to touch on them because I promise no policies, but there's a part of them that I feel real quick need addressed. So we're going to just touch base, and in future videos we will go a bit more in detail. But like I said, today, just quick touch base and hit them and go. The immigrant situation. I've done a video on this. If you're asking this, please refer to my immigration video. But how do I stand on what's going on at the southern border, the crossings of the border? Please just watch the video. Do I agree with immigration? In general, yes. Illegal immigration, no. Short answer, next question. How about the inflation that's going on right now? A nice chunk of the inflation, like the biggest example that gets brought up to me and complained about by the guys at work, gas prices. Okay, last year there was a pandemic. Most people weren't driving, and it's the ongoing pandemic. It's still going on. But last year, most people weren't driving to and from work. They weren't going places. They were staying home. Gas companies took a big hit last year. Now, gas prices always fluctuate. Up, down, up, down, up, down. You think losing the money they lost last year with nobody going anywhere, they weren't going to try and make up for it this year? And when gas prices go up, the price of hauling stuff goes up. And thus, the price of everything tends to go up. Now, is that the only factor? No. Absolutely not. I can name one right off the top of my head instantly. Worker shortage, quote unquote. There's not people unloading stuff. Stuff's taking longer to ship. There's not people shipping it in some cases. There's not people producing it in some cases. If you have a part that needs built and there's one customer that wants that part and you have 100, you kind of have to sell it low. Because if you have 100, your competitor probably has 100. And they might decide to sell it lower. And that customer, that one customer who wants that part, why there's 200 parts being built if only one person wants it? I don't know. It's a fake situation. But if one person wants it, it's the basis of supply and demand. There's a low demand and a high supply. Price is down. Well, right now, with stuff not getting built, it's more like you have 200 customers and one part. And if you have 200 people that want that and you only have one, you can charge kind of whatever you feel like. Up to a certain point, because a lot of stuff has regulations on it. But not the point. It's basic supply and demand right now. As well as making up for last year, as well as worker shortage. There are a number of contributing factors to this. And people ask, how will you address that? And that is a very complex question because it's not one issue causing it. It's not a simple thing of, oh, well, I'd get people working again, I guess. That's not as simple as it comes. You can't single neatly bow and box this. There's a lot of issues going on with that and a lot that need addressed in their own ways. And now you're saying you're dodging the question. You're not addressing how it is. Well, okay, we want to address it. How about stricter regulations on oil companies? How about instead of giving them massive tax breaks, we start taxing them. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, you start taxing the companies. They're going to carry that over to the people. But in case anybody hasn't noticed, over the last 30 years, companies have gotten billions upon billions in tax breaks and then proceeded to charge more and more for their products. The price of things is going up whether they pay taxes or not. So if you ask me, maybe we should be taxing them. Makes sense, right? Not to some people for some reasons. Blows my mind how you can look at rich companies and rich individuals and go, yeah, they deserve that money. Now I'm going to go kill myself at my job so that my company makes that money. But, you know, my boss deserves his pay more than I do. I don't deserve a raise. I don't deserve minimum wage to go up. It makes no sense to me. And yes, I will openly criticize that every chance I get. And sorry I got completely sidetracked on that. Like I said, a lot of this is stuff I'm very adamant about. So when we went with how do we address inflation, kind of got a little sidetracked on, you know, ways that don't necessarily address inflation, but things that would better this country in general that are related to it in a degree. Anyways, another one that gets posed to me. Prisons. What do we do about prison reform? And that is a very tough one because a lot of the prisons in the United States have been privatized, more or less. It's another thing that we pump money into that somebody's making money off of. And it's sickening because there's varying degrees of prisons. You're not putting white-collar criminals in with hardcore murderers. And anytime you see a celebrity, they usually get like house arrest for shit they do, no matter what. And politicians, they usually get like a, don't do it again. And that is sickening to me. The amount of money you make, what you do for a living, should not affect how you're treated by the legal system. And that's really hard when a good portion of things are fine-based. But if we take an example from other countries, fines in certain countries aren't set amounts. It's not, you were speeding, here's a $100 ticket. To which the guy who makes millions and millions of dollars would be like, oh no, $100. But the guy who makes $1,000 is going to be like, if only I'd just slowed down. There's a bill. What am I going to do? How's my family going to survive this? But there's countries where instead, things that are fines are percentage based. And personally, I'm all for percentage based fines. If you make it as hard on the rich guy when he gets fined as you make it on the poor guy, that's great. Now, the thing about percentage fines is they need to be stepped. Because as I've said in other videos, $100 to a guy who makes $1,000 is a lot more painful than, you know, $1 million to a guy who brings in $1 billion. So the fines would actually need to be stepped to a certain degree to really drive it home. The same way taxes should be stepped to really drive it home. If people are making inexorbitant amounts of money, they should contribute inexorbitantly. Is it fair? Percentage-wise, absolutely not. Percentage-wise. Realistic? Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to walk down the road and see a man begging for change and walk down the road and see a man wearing Armani and think if I had to ask one of them for $10 that it's the same regardless. And that is maybe something we really need to drive home in this country. Not all men are created equal, as our Constitution says. In a certain sense, they are created equal. But as far as this country works, we're very much not created equal. Somebody who's born with a silver spoon in their mouth has far more opportunities than somebody born in the ghetto. Somebody born with that silver spoon in their mouth has far more chance of succeeding